Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm going to be talking about the lunar calendar and basically like the history and general stuff about it. And we're going to also talk about the solar calendar, but I'm mainly focused on the lunar calendar because, well, it's going to be Chinese New Year tomorrow, and I didn't really understand why Chinese New Year just fell on different days of the year. It fell in January, last year it fell in like February, and then a few years ago it fell in like March. I didn't understand, and I thought it was just a celebration that you'd randomly assign. I didn't even understand it until I realized it was on the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar is different from the solar calendar by 11 days ish, 11, 12 days. And this is because the lunar calendar goes by the orbit of the moon, not the orbit of the earth around the sun. It's pretty good in some cases, but it also has many cons. First of all, the lunar calendar goes like this. The new moon is the start of a new month. Then you have a full moon, which is near the middle of the month. Then you have a new moon again, which is the start of a new month. This is the lunar calendar, and you could tell generally where you were from the crescent. So here would be a new moon, and you'd have crescents and then waning moons that would tell you near what time of the month you were in. Ancient societies use this because they didn't have smartphones. They couldn't tell like the day. They couldn't tell what week it was by just writing it down. That'd be cumbersome. So they could just look at the moon and approximately guess where in the month they were, where in the year they were. And the lunar year was actually 354, 55-ish days as opposed to 365, which which is big. That's a big difference. July could start in summer, then it'd become a winter month. That's not really good. So that's why people like the ancient Egyptians, they developed different ways to go around this. They developed lunar and solar calendars, which mixed the best of both worlds. They got the easy, like detectable way of telling what month you're in by using the lunar calendar, but also depicting the seasons with the solar calendar. So it'd go a bit like this. They'd have a lunar calendar set, but they'd have calibrations added in between just so they could get back to the original 365 days of a solar calendar. Different societies did this different ways. For example, some societies they had a lunar calendar, and every 2 to 3 years they would add just a new lunar month, and that would account for the whole entire shebang and the problems. It's not perfect because a lunar month is only 30ish days, but it's still a good correction, and it follows in line with a solar year. Now, solar years have a history of their own, and one of the earlier calendars that was developed was the Julian calendar. It's not the earliest, but it was one of the earliest calendars that was very good because it deviated slowly. What I mean by that is, in a few thousand years, you would still have generally this amount of the same and correct date if you use the calendar, and if you just used it, it would not have a difference in days. It would be very close to the actual day of the Earth or what date it was. So the Julian calendar was 365 days. You have the January all the way to December, and then you added a leap day every 4 years into February because February had 28 days because they just plucked out dates and added them to other months, which is why some months have 30, some months have 31, and why February was left with 28. So this is pretty important, but the problem was with the Julian calendar is that it was very close, but it wasn't close enough. The years, the days in a year that we actually go around the sun, it's not perfectly 365 and a quarter. It's actually a little bit less than a quarter, 365.2422. That's a little bit less, and that means there's going to be a slight deviation. Over the course of 1,500 years, there was only a deviation of around 11 days, which is pretty good if you're thinking about it, because in a few thousand years, only 11 days, amazing. But Pope Gregory III and the Catholic Church wanted Easter to fall on the same day it did thousands of years ago. So what they do, they changed the calendar, corrected the deviation, and they made the Gregorian calendar, which now most areas of the world follow. It's a good solar year and solar year calendar because it deviates even slower than the Julian calendar. It's 365 days, it's the Julian calendar, but there's one added difference. Every 400 years, every 3 leap years would be skipped. So they just be normal years, which would account for the extra add-on that the Julian calendar did not account for. So this was pretty good. But there are also other proposed calendars that are better and have a smaller deviation, but that would be cumbersome to change our whole entire calendar system just to get like be more efficient. When we can add leap days, we even add leap seconds or leap minutes when we can. This usually helps with astrology and kind of relates to space tech, but I won't talk about that. Um, then you have extra leap minutes and stuff like that, but it's usually leap seconds because leap seconds help put it back on course, and we've had hundreds of leap seconds added to our history. This really helps, and this helps with the Gregorian calendar staying on track. And that's just like a brief history of the lunar calendar and the solar calendar, and this will probably be a better video to give you a good understanding of why things like Chinese New Year or like other events that happen with the lunar calendar happen different days, and it also gives you a better understanding of why we even use this lunar calendar when we have a solar calendar. And it just boils down to the fact that they found it more cumbersome to write down the days as opposed to just looking at the moon. And I know approximately what time of month it is. That's my take and what my understanding of the lunar calendar and solar calendar is. I hope you've learned something, and if you haven't, then chances are that you know a lot more than me. But maybe comment down below and maybe explain some stuff that you learned and maybe some things I got wrong. I'm not perfect. Every person's gonna make a mistake, but I hope everyone learned at least something. All right, thank you.